another Coffee with Samso, where we speak with ASX companies and their people who actually run the company and manage the stories. We've got Nicole Galloway Warland back here with us from Thor Mining. Nicole has come on Coffee with Samso previously and talked to us about their projects. Look, Thor has been very, very active this year. They've really matured a lot of their projects. Nicole, welcome back, and thank you for giving us your time.
My pleasure. Good to catch up again.
Look, Nicole, you guys have been super busy, which is always good for companies like yourself. As I said, the projects the last time we sort of talked were still fairly lack of work, I guess, in some ways. That's the right words to use. But look, Ragged Range, you've done a heap copper in South Australia, as well as Molyhill. Shall we just start with Ragged Range? I think that's one of the projects that I like the most now as compared to before. Tell us what's been happening.
So just firstly, Noel, you're right. So that this year's really been about building momentum, so collecting, layers of geological information so that we can now, particularly the last 2 months, get out on the ground and start testing some of these targets. So whether they be geochem, geophysics, so testing these targets. At Ragged Range, we've got a fantastic, highly prospective tenement package over the Kelly Greenstone belt to the south of Calidus, not too far from Hemi's project. So looking for large, deep structural targets to host gold mineralisation. We did a series of stream and soil sampling along identified large structural targets. And based on the geochem anomalies, we've now gone in and started drill testing that area. And that area in particular is called Sterling Prospect. And we hope to have those assays out, if not this week, early next week. So it's sort of been one of those processes, and we're really excited about, and getting on the ground and drill testing our maiden drilling program.
Look, as I said, Nicole, in when we first spoke, Ragged Range wasn't really on my radar when we talked about your projects. I was probably more distracted with things like Molyhill, your uranium stuff in the US, but looking at what you guys have got there and the potential, obviously, it helps when you've been on the ground and you've done some work. Look, the Pilbara has always been sort of it was the first gold rush. Not a lot of people remember that. And the projects that Calidus has, or even Kairos and Hemi, even Armas with their project, they all seem to be big number projects. They're not small, and so I guess in that environment, and we are actually in a place where you don't have a lot of cover. You're literally walking on bedrock in that sense. But access is difficult, I can understand, in a lot of places. In your thinking when you're attacking Ragged Range, now that I can see that you've got what potential of a porphyry, and then you've got your sterling, and then you've got even a nickel gossan. How do you guys sort of look at that now, and what's the level of optimism that you would have?
So look, I think the Pilbara, or the Archean Pilbara Craton, is a poor cousin to the Yilgarn, but we're certainly seeing with Calidus and Hemi's project that these are large scale gold deposits that we're discovering. At our Ragged Range project, it's in a way being missed because it is isolated. It's not near any roads or easy access. Our first sort of stream sediment programs were all helicopter supported. We now have an access track in, so that opens up that country. But it's very, very underexplored, but I believe highly, great potential for gold, as well as nickel. We've got a nickel gossan, and like you said, the copper gold in the northeast, as well as lithium in the granitoids to the north. Our focus is, though, at the moment, is on that Sterling prospect, so the gold. But certainly over the next few months and certainly 2022, we'll be looking at the other areas and progressing the assessment on those different areas.
Okay, and I guess, from Ragged Range, I mean, I can see in your presentations, you guys are standing on this nickel gossamer hill or a mound, you could call it in Australia. Nickel is not also foreign to the Pilbara. They've had a lot of nickel plays. So, I mean, was that discovered while you guys were there, or was that already something you had known about?
Really, we didn't know about it. So it was discovered by the Geological Survey. So it was a matter of part of the research and review of the geology that it was identified. So one of the earlier trips, we did go out and map it and rock chip, and hence identified that it extends a lot further than what was initially thought. So it's now on our radar to assess. We're looking at doing some fixed loop EM survey. I had hoped to do it this year, but I'm trying to get a geophysics company to get out in the field. For a junior, they're sort of certainly busy at the moment. So hopefully early in the new year, we can start doing some geophysics over that and then drill test. So it's a bonus to having that nickel gossamer there, and certainly adds to the overall prospectivity of this area.
Look, that's a great sort of project. Now, in my hindsight, I think from the first time we spoke, as I mentioned. But look, copper in South Australia again. That's a unique project in a sense, right? Unique in the sense that a small junior, as you've just mentioned, could, if things go well for you and the results are favourable, and from some of your announcement, looks like you're getting the right kind of results at this point in time, could catapult you guys to be a producer, which is quite bizarre for a small company like yourself, right?
Yeah, you're right. So at our Alfred East project, which we acquired at the end of last year, we realised after we acquired it and started putting the data together, just how much drilling had been put into the area. And we're able to generate a mineral resource estimate of just under 200,000 tonnes of contained copper. This also abuts our Alfred West project, which we have 30% equity in with the Enviro Copper. And there's also their Kapunda project. So overall, we've got over 400,000 tonnes of contained copper that we're looking at assessing. And we're looking at using in situ recovery, which is a low cost, low environmental alternative to traditional mining. The really exciting thing also about in situ recovery is you don't have that long phase of assessment and development. We hope next year that we'll be in our feasibility trial stage, which can then be upgraded based obviously on decision points and permitting approvals to be in development by 2023. So that time frame is really quite short to take this project forward.
Because ISR in situ recovery, it's not a new technology. It's as you've previously said, it's used in the uranium industry commonly, and a lot. I guess a lot of times people think ISR is going to have environmental issues in the fact that you're actually pumping chemicals into the ground. How do you appease that kind of thinking going forward?
So, like any project, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to assess the project, not only on the geology. So we've obviously done our diamond drilling. Just want to highlight that over 73 metres at 1% copper, so really broad, high-grade zones. But that drilling also, we were able to get a much stronger structural control over mineralisation. And then we did some pump testing, so initial pump testing, and this is to identify if the mineralised zone is actually porous, permeable, etc., which it is. So we have groundwater from 12 metres right through our ore zone. And we're able to identify the flow of the groundwater, but most importantly, salinity and pH. So in this particular case, we've got a high salinity So the water is not potable or amenable to livestock or agriculture. So it only has an industrial purpose. But most important is we need to understand the structural setting. And so if, for example, we do put a benign lixiviant or a solution into the ground, we need to be able to control where that solution is going to flow. So we need to have monitoring bores in there and understand the geology very well before we can move to our next phase. And that's sort of the development phase we're going through now. And I'll highlight that we aren't using an acid, which they use in the uranium sector. We're using a benign amino glycine. This is a food additive, so it's non-toxic to humans or animals, and it sort of dissolves in the system within a few days. So we are trying to tick all the environmental risk assessments, shall we say.
When I look at your, we'll call it the copper project in South Australia, because again, it's a combination of three sort of prospects, if you want to put it that way. When you sort of calmly mention 73 meters at 1% copper, that's a significant intercept, right? It's not a small 2-meter intercept. So, and the fact that you've got over 400,000 tonnes of contained copper as a resource, not measured or anything like that, but that is significant, right? If you were able to even pull out 200,000 tonnes of copper, contained copper, that is a lot of zeros.
Yeah, and you're right. That's a broad high-grade intercept for any style of mining, regardless. So it's a great intercept, and we're obviously pushing the copper mineralization outside the resource envelope. So it's open still at depth as well as along strike. So we hope to be able to build on that resource. But more importantly, we're understanding the setting and can now target these higher grade zones, which is really exciting.
I mean, from an investor point of view, you are, for this project, you're in that development stage. As you said, you're trying to create a model where you can extract the copper in the right manner. You've gone past trying to find the resource, right, for this project. That's a fair comment.
Well, we've identified a resource. We're now building on that resource, and then can move it forward. But certainly, with these broad high-grade intercepts, we feel very confident that we can increase that resource. And we also know the geological or the Alford copper belt itself extends over several kilometres. So lots of opportunity to extend this as the project develops.
And I'm guessing from the location of where it is, infrastructure is not going to be a problem for you going down that road when you get to that stage.
No, so infrastructure is fantastic for the project.
Yeah, look, I kind of like this project a lot now because of the green nature and the no emission world that we're sort of going into, and you sort of fall into that category. How much of that category you become, it's still a question in the air, I guess. But you're definitely in situ. You're not digging great big holes. You're using benign, sort of economic, environmentally friendly chemical solutions. There's a few boxes being ticked there, I guess, on an ESG point of view.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we're aware that we need copper, particularly with, renewables, the EV space. So we need copper, but I think we need to start looking at socially and environmentally conscious ways of acquiring that copper. And I think in situ recovery is ideal. As you mentioned, there isn't the open cut, there isn't the tailings dam. There's very minimal impact to the surface. And so essentially once those well fields are removed, it can go back to agricultural grounds. So there's, minimal disturbance to, the current activities. So the other thing is we don't need the machinery, the power, so we're not having the same carbon emissions as an open cut or underground operation has. So It ticks a lot of those environmentally friendly categories.
the other project that I want to touch on, obviously, is the Molyhill project. It's a bit more sort of involved now because moly prices have, well, not go through the roof, but they're at all-time high since probably 2010. And as I think you mentioned, tungsten has also moved up the ladder and into that critical space. Again, you're playing with critical minerals or critical metals. What's the update on that project?
So Molyhill, is actually very exciting at the moment. We've identified a new discovery to the south of the known Molyhill resource. And the second hole intercepted over 46 metres of tungsten, molybdenum, copper mineralisation, with the third hole continuing to build on that model, which is a south plunging lode. We're not sure if it's offset, but certainly a continuation of the Molyhill deposit. You're right. A lot of work has been done on this project. So back in 2018, a feasibility study was done, showing that the project would be profitable, low operating cost, capex. But the commodity prices did fall. But we're now seeing, a 2-year high for both tungsten and molybdenum, and certainly, the growth and demand for those commodities is increasing, and I don't see that changing over the near future. We know with molybdenum, the semiconductor space is, huge growth there, and we know, not only with the post-economic stimulus in the manufacturing and industrial side of things, aerospace, there's demand, but more importantly, the geopolitical side of things. So we know for both tungsten and molybdenum, China dominates the world production. By having resources outside of China also opens up the market. The Northern Territory government has granted us a major project status, so they're certainly supportive of the project and promoting it. And this recent drilling program was government co-funded, so they're very excited with this new discovery as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, pre-COVID has created an issue where a lot of metals traditionally were fairly boring or not sort of on the radar of most investors. There's a shift, right? There's a geopolitical or a new EV revolution, no emission revolution, and the metals are what we need. And I think I saw a chart. Moly has, out of all the metals, it's using at least 6 renewable energy power, which is a lot, right?
Yeah, it's huge, and it's not only the renewables, but so many other industries that you don't necessarily think of. I mean, we think of obviously stainless steel, but there's a lot of other uses of molybdenum in the different lubricants, in the different catalysts that it's used in. So it's quite a wide market that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Going back to the geology of Molyhill, I mean the recent discovery, as we all sort of know, the copper moly copper space, the biggest deposits in the world are all associated with skarns. Has that been sort of in your thinking that maybe you've got something, or Molyhill is actually bigger than what you had first thought of?
Well, look, earlier this year we did a revised mineral resource estimate, taking it to measured category. But as part of that process, we did a 3D modelling exercise, so incorporating the geology, the mineralisation, as well as the geophysics. And this is where we highlighted this recent target to the south of the mineralisation, which we now drill tested, confirmed its magnetite skarn host to tungsten, molybdenum and copper. But it's also identified numerous other magnetic targets, which we now hope to assess, in the coming year. So it certainly does open up the prospectivity of growing that resource even further. So it's really exciting for the project and a huge game changer.
Yeah. Look, you've got the uranium vanadium play in the US that we haven't sort of spoken about. To be honest, the projects that we've been talking about, I could have so many questions for you. But equally, that's also a couple of few holes in the ground. You could put them on the same level as what the three projects we've been talking about.
Yeah, look, the uranium project's been fairly quiet in the last few months. We have all our federal permitting in place, but we're just working through the Colorado County permit. So just a few things like roads and bridges. So we hope to have that in place and be drilling fairly soon. Look, these are particularly, our focus at the moment is on the Colorado side of our project. So it's in the Uravan mineral belt. This is highly prospective, high-grade uranium that we're exploring for. I think as directors, we all feel very confident we're going to intercept high-grade uranium and vanadium. It'll be a question of the thicknesses and the extent. So we're very optimistic about this project, and in particular Area 23, which is one of the three prospects that we hope to be drilling. And this has previously been untested because it was held by the government, and will be the first company to go into that ground. We know the geology and the favourable horizons continue along strike. So yeah, really exciting about testing that target in particular.
Look, Nicole, when we spoke, and I think I've mentioned this in this conversation already, that the suite of projects you have is really not sort of common in an explorer with the level of activity or at the level of interest that you've got them at. Most companies have one that everyone talks about, and the rest, oh yeah, by the way, we got that as well. But for me, when I look at it, Ragged Range, these which has a lot of potential now, deep-seated structures, and you're seeing the signals there in the work they've done. Then you got your copper in South Australia, which is effectively could make you a producer in 2023 and you're a 23 million market cap company, and the capex for that project would not be hundreds of millions. Then you've got your Molyhill project, which is you're kicking goals there as well. How you gonna, and I've been trying to get you on Coffee Samso for forever. How is that, how are you going to prioritize things as we go forward? Because investors who watch this, who then suddenly go, maybe get that light bulb moment like I have, might be saying, oh, which one's going to be the major focus?
Look, you're right. We've got a very diverse portfolio of projects, all in global demand commodities. And this year's really been about building momentum. So really generating new geology to build those projects, whether it be for a discovery, whether it be for moving it towards development. I think they're all exciting, all great projects. I mean, as a geologist, Ragged Range, to test a new area, huge potential for a discovery. Having said that, Molyhill, we've just drilled into a target, magnetic target. We took the risk and we've come up trumps. So, all these projects have lots of potential, lots of prospectivity. At the moment, we're kicking goals. We're out there drilling 3 of these projects. We're not afraid to get on the ground. We've been very busy. Having said that, I just divested our Pilot Mountain project. So I'm not afraid to review projects and keep in mind our shareholder value. And if I feel that a project is time to move on or get a joint venture partner in, then that's what we'll do. So we're certainly, progressing the projects, but being open-minded and wanting to generate, shareholder value. And if that's, through a discovery or through, an opportunity, whether it be a joint venture partner, then that's what I will do.
Okay. Look, going forward, what's the news flow going to be for Thor? I can see some of the notes that you've made in your presentation, but what's the current news flow going to be for the next 12 months as we go into 2022?
Well, look, the next month there's going to be a lot of news flow. So the lead up to Christmas, we're going to have our Ragged Range Sterling Prospect RC drilling results come through. So that's really exciting. We'll have the final assays back from our Alfred East drilling, as well as the metallurgical results. And at Molyhill, we'll have the diamond drilling assays back in from the recently completed program. So sort of, a lot of news flow over the next month. And then we'll be building on these projects, on these results in 2022, and be back out on the ground, progressing these projects, whether it be for a discovery or to progress development.
Look, Nicole, I've just got a couple of things, maybe I will just ask you questions, and I know we're a bit short on time. You got a plane to catch. When I look at Ragged Range, you've got, now you denoted on, you potentially got copper porphyry, you've got nickel, you've got some structural component with your sterling. It looks like an area that's got a lot of cooking mechanisms happening, and everyone's there. All the cousins are playing at the same time. How do you picture that? I mean that to me, from an exploration geologist point of view, there's a lot of different styles happening. Are there major structures that are controlling this sector or sections of your tenement package?
Definitely. It's the structural controls that are critical to the project. So although there's some different lithologies, I think it's the structural understanding that's critical. Particularly, we've got a deep regional structure between the ultramafics and the mafics, and this is what I believe is the host to the gold mineralisation. But overall, you need to sort of be aware of the geology, but not get too caught up in geological models and preconceived concepts. You always need to be open-minded to a new project, and not be afraid to test a theory or an idea.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think that could be the dark horse for Thor. Looking at your results recently, but last words from Nicole to those investors who are sitting on the fence or just thinking of selling to buy themselves a $5,000 Christmas present. What's your last words to them?
I'd be saying get on board. I think we've got great projects, and potential for discovery. A Ragged Range, so it's an opportunity to get on board now, because Ragged Range could be a complete game changer for Thor mining, as could Alfred East as well as Molyhill. So it's a great opportunity to come on with a fairly low market cap that we have, with huge potential.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think, as I mentioned before we started, when we started, there wasn't a lot of work. They're not very mature work on these projects, and now they're at the stage where you got to pick off Ragged Range, you got to pick off copper, you got to pick off Molyhill, and your uraniums. If you get a one or two good lucky shots there, you have a problem in terms of which one you're going to focus on.
Well, true. I should point out that obviously some projects have seasons to them as well. So where there's a wet season, which means you can now. So the Pilbara will go into the wet season, which means we can be back focused on our Alfred East project and be back out drilling. So we can plan our field season around some of these, climatic changes, shall we say. So we can continue that news flow as we move our projects forward.
Yep, that's true. That's very true. And let's face it, it's any one of those can tick off. But I think your Alfred East copper project in South Australia's got its own life, and it's going its own movement, and it will just happen in some ways. Molyhill looks like you've just made an extension of a discovery, and a few more drill holes will move that, and Ragged Range is. Anything can happen there. Look, Nicole, thank you for your time. Look, appreciate really giving her time. And look, it's it's definitely a coffee of Samso that's matured since the last time we spoke. And I think that the amount of content we've just been talking about here is evidence of what I think it's matured, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we've really sort of built that momentum up, and now, we're out there drilling, as I said, 3 of our projects. So lots of news flow and exciting days ahead.
Okay, look, Nicole, fantastic, and we'll continue following your journey, and I'm sure the results will come out from all your projects, and we'll talk about that over time.
Yep, look forward to our next coffee.
All right.